Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome to the Shrewsbury Biscuit. We're back. This is the third show in a row we'll be doing live, talking about the Darwin Festival, which is happening next week. I'm having a lot of fun speaking to a lot of participants, and today I've managed to rope him into this one. Well, not rope, because Jon King is an amazing guy to speak to, but here he is, Mr. Shane Hinton. Return of the Mac. Oh yeah. How are you? You good?
Yeah, I'm all good, mate. I'm all good. I had a job
Yeah?
interview this morning, which
How
was
did it
quite
go?
good. Yeah, it was good. It was good. Just got some thinking to do, I think.
Got your thinking cap on, always.
Pretty
Yeah.
much.
Now we need to speak to Jon King because he's the founder of the Darwin Festival as it is today. He does the best Darwin tour I've been on. It's we had such an amazing talk last year when I went along to do it. I had long weird hair. It was very strange, but I enjoyed it nonetheless. Here he is, Mr. Jon King. Thank you very much for joining us, John.
Good morning, everybody. It's afternoon now, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, it's afternoon. Yeah, it's been a long afternoon, afternoon. It's been one of those days today. Thank you, everybody, for watching it. Just a quick tip, by the way. If you're watching this on Facebook, that's great. Thank you very much. But, if you go over to our YouTube channel and hit subscribe, you can throw us on the TV. You can put us on the big 50-inch TV. It might not look so good, but it's definitely going to sound a lot better.
Side note, if you're watching this on Facebook and you have an Xbox, if you download Facebook Watch on the Xbox, you can also stream this on your Xbox. Just saying.
There you go. You want to see me bigger? Put us on the TV. Thank you very much for
Your
joining
head
us,
does
John.
not need to be any bigger, mate.
John, when we had a conversation last year, you do the tour every year. I was very surprised to find out that you started this thing because you realised that there was a huge opportunity being missed by us not celebrating the fact that Charles Darwin is a son of Shrewsbury.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was working. Some people may be old enough to remember when I was a presenter on BBC Radio Shropshire. And one of the guests on my show was a chap called Henry Quinn, who's a local hosteleria. Anyway, he ran a hotel and a pub. He was a very keen amateur historian. And when I met him, he was kind of the voice in the wilderness. Henry Quinn was the one that was saying, Shrewsbury's the birthplace of Charles Darwin. We should make more of this. Why don't we make more of the fact? This could be a really big thing for the town. And I've done a lot of local history on my show. People like Mike Stokes, who's the town archaeologist, was a regular guest. So we did the Normans, we did the Romans, we did medieval history, etc., etc. And here's Henry saying, well, look, that's all interesting, but what about Charles Darwin? So I simply took the same approach as I would have done with producing a radio program. I said, okay, what's the topic? The topic's Charles Darwin. Who are the experts? Get some experts together. So it was the Wildlife Trust. I know you were talking to John Hughes earlier on. The arts officer for the council, the town management, somebody from the town management, and somebody from Shrewsbury School. We sat down in a room in the Wildlife Trust headquarters, and I said, look, you guys all do events anyway. How's about you do me a favour? Each of you do an event the week of his birthday next February. Somebody find me a couple of £100 and I'll print some brochures. Let's just do it. And that is literally how the Darwin Festival started. And the first one was in 2003.
Wow. What was the reaction to that from the town? The local people, were people excited about it? Were people shocked? Were people like, "Oh, Darwin's from Shrewsbury? I never knew." Like, what was the reaction?
Well, I think there was a lot of people who knew that they got it. They got the fact. They just were waiting for somebody to do something about it. So I don't count myself as particularly important. I just found myself at a place in time where I could just draw a few strands together and get the ball rolling. I think that for me, what's always been the case is it's the reaction from people who aren't in Shrewsbury, who aren't in Shropshire, who aren't in the UK. In the run up to the bicentenary in 2009, we'll maybe talk a little bit about that later on, that the world was beating a path to our door, and the world's press were coming. People were coming from Australia, from America, all over the place. I mean, it was quite remarkable. And then actually, the truth is, they were coming anyway. We just didn't know. They were coming independently. arriving in town, booking a room in a hotel, not saying anything to anybody, quietly going around, seeking out places that had some relevance to Charles, be walking up the driveway to the mount and taking a photograph and leaving. And that was it. And I think what would have surprised them would have been to come all the way into the centre of Shrewsbury and see no reference to him whatsoever. And I think that's what surprised people.
You were telling us a story that I thought was really funny, but quite sad as well. The story about the town sign as you come into Shrewsbury. That was quite funny.
The orbital signs that say "Welcome to Shrewsbury." So, some local listeners will remember that up until a certain point in time, the signs around on the orbital routes entrances into Shrewsbury said "Welcome to Shrewsbury, twinned with Zutphen." which because it is, and Zutphen's a lovely place, and actually the whole twinning movement. I mean, let's not lose sight of this. Excuse me. The whole twinning movement, which arose after the Second World War, was really about connecting communities across Europe. This is really, really important work. So I would never decry how important it was that we were twinned with Zutphen. But however, it's not a major selling point. And essentially what happened was that at the time I was working for what was then Shrewsbury and Atcham Borough Council, and the plans were basically, it was part of the work programme. At some point, yes, we have to replace all the signs. They're all getting a bit aged. Let's put the signs up again. And I thought, well, that might be an opportunity to not just put the old, make new versions of the old signs. Could it say something else? And the Town Centre Residents Association, who I'd been talking to as well, they were really keen too. So the upshot was that when the signs went back, it didn't say twinned with Zutphen anymore. It said, "Welcome to Shrewsbury, birthplace of Charles Darwin."
Well done. Great achievement. Shane, when you were growing up as a lad, because you're a true Salopian, unlike me, how old were I mean, this is a strange question, but it's interesting to know. Like, when you were young, really, really young, were you aware of this was where Charles Darwin was from, or how old were you when you realised? Sort of?
I think myself, I didn't truly understand it until I got to my sort of end of junior school to secondary school. It wasn't like prevalent in my sort of nursery and infant age that I can remember. But I think it's because when you grow up here, it just becomes the normal. It's not that significant, if you know what I mean. It's just like, oh, Charles Darwin was born here, cool, and that's just sort of like how it's kind of. Can you hear me all right, by the way?
Yeah.
That's just better. How it's kind of put forward to the kids, kind of thing, I guess. It's still, it's still sort of driven, but it's not like how somebody who from outside would be like, you live where Charles Darwin lives, especially if there's someone who's actually got a keen interest in Charles Darwin. And then, do you know what I mean? It's like, I suppose it's one of those things where you don't really appreciate it when you see it all the time, I
feel sorry for the likes of like Greg Davis, world famous comedian. He's like, yeah, I'm from Shrewsbury. Oh, isn't that where Charles Darwin's from? Yes, that's where Charles Darwin's from, not Greg Davis.
Flip a table and walk out.
I think some of the problem we have really is that if you look at all the images of Charles Darwin, and he's pale, male, and stale. He's one of a catalogue of Victorian figures in the scientific community. Very rarely do women get a look in. So if you looked at the old Charles Darwin, you say that's Charles Darwin, but would it mean anything to you? And in the earlier chat you had with John Hughes from the Wildlife Trust and with Sharon Leach, and I think John was at pains to point out that that's not our Charles Darwin. That isn't our Charles Darwin. And I think that the genius of it all, really, if you think the resources that a modern day scientist has at their fingertips, the things they can use, the technologies that they can use, the ways to capture imagery in a way that Charles Darwin didn't have a camera with him. He didn't have an iPhone with him when he was on the voyage of the Beagle. Do you know what I'm saying?
Can you imagine?
Yeah, exactly. So none of that's there, right? He's got a notebook and a pen, and he's got this, and he's got these, and that's it. Now, the point is that if you can come up with an earth-shattering theory, essentially based on observation and recording, and and a great deal of reflection, which he did at Down House. That's the amazing thing about it, and the beauty of it is that he didn't see anything that people hadn't seen before, but he saw it differently. And if you can teach young people that actually, there are great mysteries to be solved simply by paying attention, by observation, and having an open mind. And it's interesting that the logo of the Darwin Festival has these great ideas bursting out of Darwin's hat. It is an open mind that achieves things, not a closed one.
I actually think that some of that is culpable to the education system, though, because the education system nowadays and standardized testing puts people in boxes, and it numbs that creativity and that sort of out the box thinking. It takes a certain person to then break out of that rule set, especially in this day and age, and with the technology and stuff that you have now, to then step out of that comfort zone, and you always feel like you're going to be weird, but actually it's the weird people that are the ones that are doing these things.
Wow, Shane, that's a really, really good point. Charles Darwin was, as his tutors said, and his father agreed when he left Shrewsbury School, an average student. Yeah. Word for word, he was described as an average student. If any of his masters at Shrewsbury School found out years later that Charles Darwin came up with the theory of evolution, they'd go, Charles Darwin?
That guy?
Charles Darwin? That guy that wouldn't pay attention in class? That even though he was boarding at Shrewsbury School, less than a mile or so from his home, used to keep sneaking off all the time and coming back late, when he should have been in his dorm. That Charles Darwin, the one who isn't interested in the classics that were trying to ram down his throat? Yes, that Charles Darwin, actually. And you wonder how many of the dreamers, and I was, I confess I didn't pay attention in class. I learned all my history from historians. I had the most privileged job you can imagine when I was working as a presenter on BBC Radio Shropshire. If I wanted to find out about the Romans in Shropshire, I'd get a guy like Vince Gaffney, who was leading the archaeological digs on the site. And I'd say,
ask the man who know. I suppose ask people that know.
Man who knows. Absolutely, I didn't even have. I didn't have. We didn't in those days. We didn't have the internet. But seriously, if I want, I could literally ring somebody up and say, "Will you come on my show?" Yeah, I'll do that. Thank you. And it lit a bonfire in my head, and I thought, Lord, if I could have had teachers who were as enthusiastic as the experts I later met in adult life when I was at school, who knows? I mean,
and I will caveat all that as well by saying it's not necessarily the teacher's fault, because the teachers are put in a box
absolutely.
Themselves,
my father was a teacher. I understand how the system works. What I'm saying is that here's the thing. So Darwin's at school at Shrewsbury, then he goes to Edinburgh University, then he comes back, then he goes to Cambridge, then he comes back. Because he showed a glimmer of promise to the right kind of people when he was at Edinburgh, and specifically at Cambridge. When the opportunity of a lifetime came up, and they made a short list of people who could be the naturalist on the voyage of the Beagle, on HMS Beagle, Darwin's name was on it. Now, Darwin's name wasn't on it because he'd studied natural history. He kind of had, but he'd done it extracurricular. That's not what he was supposed to be studying. He didn't go to Edinburgh to study natural history. He didn't go to Cambridge to study natural history. He studied natural history, but he should have been paying attention to other subjects. And his father was furious. And when the offer letter came, his father said, "No, you can't go. You're wasting your time. Come on, pull yourself together. Sort yourself out. No, you're not going on the voyage of the Beagle." Wow.
It must have been really hard to live in a family of excellence like that. Everybody's got their own stake to claims that everybody recognizes today, and to be part of that must have been incredibly overshadowing for him.
Pressure. His grandfathers, Josiah Wedgwood I, the founder of the Wedgwood dynasty, was his grandfather on his mother's side. Wow. Erasmus Darwin was his grandfather on his father's side. Erasmus Darwin.
That's a hell of a name, isn't it? Erasmus.
He was a poet. He was a philosopher. He inspired as a poet. He inspired the Romantic poets that followed in the Victorian era. He devised a means of steering carriages that's still used in the automotive industry today. Josiah Wedgwood, buy one, get one free. Celebrity endorsements. That's Josiah Wedgwood. That's how he operated his business. They were members of the Lunar Men. So the Lunar Men, Bolton and Watt, Joseph Priestley, Erasmus Darwin and Josiah Wedgwood. These were great thinkers. These were amazing minds, So what a lineage. I mean, if you keep going, Charles Darwin's great nephew was Ralph Vaughan Williams, the composer. Well, wow. So yeah, I suppose some degree of pressure. The thing is, what you need to understand, and this is what Darwin understood, and indeed all his siblings understood, was that there was money in the family. Okay, there was combined wealth from the Wedgwoods and the Darwins. I can't imagine what today's value would be. But even in his first university, Darwin had realised that his father, because his mother had died when he was 8, his father was going to gift him funds to keep him comfortable for the rest of his life. So he didn't actually have to do anything at all. And his elder brother, also called Erasmus, Raz Darwin, did begin to practice medicine for a few short years and had some spells of ill health. And his father said to Raz Darwin, don't worry, son, why don't you just retire? And Raz Darwin was 26. Wow. So money was not an issue.
I'd love to retire at 26.
Yeah, wouldn't those years have long gone for me. But anyway, the point I'm making is,
as well.
Yeah, the point I'm making is that he could have done nothing at all, but he couldn't do nothing. So Charles Darwin has a mind that is just constantly questioning. It's a young, inquiring mind, and he's encouraged to think that way. I mean, he was encouraged to study, pay attention at university, but he didn't. But anyway, whatever. However, so the key thing, when I was once I'd taken over the sort of Darwin role, albeit for a few years, I was starting to look at what is it about Shrewsbury and Darwin. Is it more than just the fact that this is where he was born? Is there something else that makes Shrewsbury and the county of Shropshire significant in Darwin's story? And there are lots, every famous person that's ever lived had a birthplace. Does it mean anything? How many plays did William Shakespeare write in Stratford upon Avon? So there's got to be something, and basically I started doing my research now in the previous talk, and I think, can people access these archived, Alex?
What we're doing today?
Yeah.
This will be released as a podcast. So
check out Sharon Leach and John Hughes, because Sharon talks about the garden diaries. So Charles Darwin is being taught from a very early age to observe and to record. So they were making detailed notes of what was happening in the garden. Secondly, he's born into a Unitarian family on his mother's side, particularly the Wedgwoods were Unitarians. They were nonconformists. If you come to Shrewsbury, and please come to Shrewsbury, it's a lovely town, and you find the Unitarian church on High Street, there is a plaque outside, and the plaque on the wall outside the Unitarian church sums up the Unitarian ethos: open to insights from world faiths, reason, and science. So Darwin is being encouraged not just to think outside the box, but to think outside the book. And that's really significant. And the third most crucial thing is, and bearing in mind that geology was the first science that really, really seriously captured Charles Darwin's attention, Charles Darwin is lucky enough to be born in Shropshire, and Shropshire has 10 of the 12 geological periods in its landscape. In a county the size of Shropshire, that is utterly remarkable. There are pieces of rock in Shropshire today that have travelled from 60 degrees south of the equator. I mean, what an incredible journey, and picking up evidence of the ages as they go. So the other thing that Darwin understood was the true age of the Earth. So his theory on the theory on the origin of species, the slow incremental changes, generation after generation after generation, could happen if you understand that the Earth is far older than many people thought it to be at the time. You put those three things together, and that's why Shropshire and Shrewsbury are significant in Darwin's development.
Amazing. And, you can compare it to the way Charles was treated to the scientists of today, the scientists that are going, no, we need to stop doing what we're doing because there's going to be huge environmental damages. Or, by the way, with COVID, by the way, you should listen to the scientists, not the politicians. Hello, we've got this information, and nobody listens to the scientists, do they? And in fact, they blame them over and over and over again. It's just crazy.
It's an inconvenient truth, to paraphrase somebody else. Essentially, science is inconvenient if your world view is founded on myth and fantasy and exceptionalism. Let's put it another way: the view that we are somehow exceptional. We're not. We're just animals on the earth. I mean, early caricatures of Darwin after he'd published Origin of Species has him pictured like an ape, because he's basically said we're descended from apes as hominids. I think that he'd be appalled with the way things are at the moment. But I think ultimately is that we are where we are in a situation where I don't know how many million people in this country at least have been vaccinated. Vaccines. We understand vaccines. We understand this stuff because we have science. We understand that the vaccines mutate because we understand evolution.
Yeah,
that's the profound thing in all of this is an understanding. And here's the thing: the finches that he saw, the giant tortoises that he saw, why did they change? Why have they changed across generations? Why do they change from island to island? They change because of external influences, because of climate, because of access to food or no access to food. They have to adapt and change all the time. Now Darwin was observing, 200 years ago plus. He was nearly 200 years ago. He was observing things that had happened in the natural world over the course of millennia. We are changing the world in the course of generation. And that is, a serious wake-up call. And if we choose to believe that it doesn't matter, well, that's entirely up to us, I suppose. But the reality is that it's inescapable.
Yeah, and it's nice to see that there are still young people out there going out and doing amazing things. Whether they've learned lessons from Darwin or the other the geniuses that have come before him, is irrelevant when you think of some of the things like Boyan Slat, for example. When he was 16, created a device that could clear up the plastic from the oceans. No one else was thinking about these things. Boyan Slat, 16, is like, I'm gonna float tubes on the ocean and we're gonna drag in plastic. 16, so we're still getting those geniuses, we're still getting those innovative minds, but now we're having to fix different problems that probably should be, if we were thinking about other things and trying to save the planet, maybe we could advance. You know what I mean?
The thing is,
I think sorry, go on, Shane.
I was just going to say, the thing is that the way I see it is that we're in a very, very strange period in this next sort of few generations, I suppose. Because 50 years ago, 100 years ago, there's video footage or there's written letters and stuff where people had rough punts on where we're going to be today. Some of it's a bit far-fetched, like, hover cars and all this other stuff. But, they had this sort of, they were saying they were going to have handheld phones and stuff like that. And these kids were coming up with these ideas saying, no, this is where we think technology is going to go. And that's more or less where we've gone to, But it's something I sort of question myself all the time, is that where we're going to be in 50 years' time from now, or 100 years' time from now. We have no idea, because the technology is accelerating and progressing so fast. It's almost, you can't really, you can't fathom where we're going to be, because it's just accelerating at such rate of knots. It's just, it's crazy. And the forefathers of that technology and that sort of stuff are people like Charles Darwin and Harrison Ford. Not Harrison Ford.
Harrison Ford.
Not Harrison. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think. We don't know where we're going to be in 50 years' time, and I'll be frank with you, I probably won't be here in 50 years' time. Oh. But my children and my grandchildren will be here. And one thing that does I think is amazing now is that young people get stuff more than we did. I think they're more aware than we are. I think they're more concerned about the planet. Heavens, they're going to run it one day. But when you think like Greta Thunberg and people like that who are outspoken, it's problematic for certain people. It's problematic because she's young. It's problematic because she's female. Get over it. But what I'm saying is that there's a groundswell of movement, and it won't be too long before these young people will be beginning to snatch the reins from people who've held them for too long. I don't want to get. What are we talking about now? If we're going to say anyway, I think that ultimately there is hope, and I think that for me, and I think this was reflected on again in the previous talk, was this idea of reflection and reconnection.
Yes,
and for me, I think that one thing that we can do, and even if you live in a block of flats, if you can put a window box and just grow some stuff, is literally just to see the miracle, the absolute miracle of the natural world around you. If you see a spider crawling, and rather than slapping it with the back of a shoe or something, watch it for a while. Look at the marvel of that thing. That's an incredible creature. Look what it does. That we are approaching spring now in my garden just outside. We've got bulbs coming up. There will be flowers soon. There's a sense of a reawakening of nature that happens year on year on year. Yes, we're noticing that perhaps it starts sooner than it should do, and because of the various things that we've talked about. However, I think a basic reconnection in terms of our own peace of mind, and a great deal is made these days about our mental health and well-being. It is the most powerful thing that you can give to young people. My wife and I used to take our kids for walks in the countryside and various things like that. And just that reconnection, because I think technology is a wonderful thing. Here we are, the three of us talking live in our own respective homes or offices. And that's fine. That's marvelous. But let's not lose that connection. And the fact is that the young Charles Darwin, and we'll come back to Charles Darwin now, this young small boy wandering around the fields on the banks of the River Severn, watching butterflies, collecting butterflies and beetles, seeing how they operate and function, the look of them, why do they look this way? That wonder and enthusiasm and open mind is something that we all have that capacity. We're not going to write the next Origin of Species, but Lord knows we can all go into a park or a space like that and just pause, take a deep breath, have a look at the wonder of the things around us, and it doesn't half put you in your place. It makes you feel a bit more humble, which is not a bad thing.
And not only that, it's the access to data nowadays, isn't it, as well? So even if you go and do those things, and you might not necessarily find something new, but you can certainly learn about it. You can certainly find that stuff and then research it and then look into it and learn about that particular butterfly or beetle or something. And we have all that data on our fingertips. And Charles Darwin's able to do what he did with a notebook and pen and a pair of eyes. Imagine what somebody else who's like Charles Darwin could do with Google on their fingertips.
Yeah, it's interesting when the internet first came along, and social media as well, and I was an early adopter, back in 2009. You thought, oh, this is wonderful. We've got access to all the knowledge in the world. And what do we get? Videos of goats in trees.
They are funny.
Hey, whatever.
They are funny.
I'm not saying they're not funny. Don't get me wrong. A herd of goats in a tree is a singularly funny thing to see, and that's great. But
I saw an amazing video yesterday. Absolutely blew my mind. I was telling the wife about it. I was showing her across the room. I was showing Timmy, my boy. There was footage of New York from 1911 that somebody had colorized and put in HD. And it was just one of the most remarkable things I'd seen in such a long time, because this is a different world. Like, New York didn't look like it does now. It looked like a big town, a big city, And you've seen all these people. What struck me was there are so many people out on the streets. When I think of the Victorian era or 1911, which is a bit, you think of not so many people, but it's just packed. It was brilliant, and people going about their day, and that's just amazing. And
I think when you watch stuff like that, here's the other interesting thing is, we often we'll watch historical programs on TV. So wouldn't it be great to go back just for half an hour or whatever it might be? Do you know what? We haven't really changed. We've got lots of technology and stuff, but we're still innately, we are just human beings. We are fallible. We all need love. We all need comfort and shelter. We haven't really changed that much. We ain't, I didn't invent the TV. I didn't invent the internet. I can use them, but I didn't invent them.
Yeah.
I take no credit for that. I can't. I'm surrounded by things. I have no idea how they function or how they work or what their origins are. And the point I'm making is that if you strip all of that away, we are no different from our ancestors over any number of generations, all the way back almost to the point when we were rubbing shoulders with Neanderthals. There's not a huge amount of difference in that respect.
Yeah. But you did bring the Darwin Festival into the forelight, what we're looking at now, and that you can take credit for because you started the ball rolling, and you're still involved today. Are your roles now a lot less than what they were now? Is it something that's comfortable for you, or
I'm happy to take a back seat. I mean, I have to say, for the first few years of the Darwin Festival, it was to a great extent, in terms of event management, a one-man band. So I would literally be picking up a projector and a laptop and carrying it to the site, and I'd be, carrying banner stands and stuff from place to place, and literally driving across town, through the whole of that sort of February month there, and it was a one-man band. So I'm more than happy that the BID, who's doing a marvelous job, and prior to them, the Wildlife Trust took over, because the point really only was just to get the ball rolling. Just get the ball rolling. Let's get it started to a point of critical mass where we can't be not doing this anymore. And the other key thing about 2003 was we weren't that many years off the bicentenary, and I'd like to think there were people who've been thinking about the fact we better get organised for the bicentenary, but I hadn't met any at that point. Yeah. And if we hadn't been ready for that, wow.
And it does have a huge effect. I remember last year, me and Shane were at the Alb. We went to one of the sidebars which Tim Dawes puts together. They're amazing. And we were blown away by how we couldn't get in the room, could we, Shane? Do you remember?
Yeah.
We couldn't get in the room, and I had to go and set up a microphone at the beginning, which, by the way, broke. I couldn't use the audio, but I did anyway. I set up a microphone, and I had to squeeze through. And when you think about that now, during this COVID era we're going through, it makes you kind of cringe. But yeah, I was kind of moving through people, set up the microphone, and then let it go. It was just phenomenal. How many people, because the sidebar movement sort of thing is sort of the thing that's sort of grown and evolved as time goes by, and I think Shrewsbury is the perfect place for it, and that's because of what you started. People are really starting to get involved with it, and what we've got this year is the opportunity to share what we do with the Darwin Festival internationally, because there are so many great events. I mean, if I bring up the website now, I've done this on all the shows, so I'm going to do it again, but If we have a look on the website, you can see all the events that are happening. So the festival starts on the 9th to the 17th of February, as you can see there. And here are the events. If you go to originalshrewsbury.co.uk, here are all the events that are taking place. All of them you can join, like this one here, by the Shrewsbury School. Book a place. It was convenient little buttons where you can all take part and enjoy. And there's even the birthday toast there with Jon King himself. Yeah. Book a place.
I think this is in all seriousness, I think this is a huge opportunity for Shrewsbury. I think when we first met together a few months ago and thought, well, what are we going to do? How are we going to do this? I think we struggled a little to come to any kind of conclusion about how we could pull this off. I have to say that now, that realizing that this is an opportunity for people to join us anywhere in the world, and there is a worldwide community of people who are interested in Charles Darwin. And I think something I mentioned before the talk started with you, Alex, was that when the Darwin Festival first began in 2003, within a year or two, I was approached by the people involved in Shropshire tourism, and they were saying, well, it's great that you've got a festival for Charles Darwin, but why February? I said, well, inconveniently, he was born on the 12th of February. Couldn't you put it in the summer when the weather's better? Well, okay, join us for the festival in February online, wherever you are in the world, and then come and visit us when the weather's warmer.
Yeah, absolutely. When the world opens again, come see. It is beautiful, by the way. I mean, I'll share. You guys know I work with a lot of people in America with the USUC thing I do, and I share pictures of Shrewsbury, and people are actually blown away by how beautiful the town really is. Like, don't even have to sugarcoat it. Here you go. Here's a thatched house. We've got about 1 million of them in Shrewsbury. Come and see the rest of them. You don't have to do.
Well, definitely goats and trees though. Unfortunately.
No, well, we're working on it. We're working on it. I think that's the other thing is that again, I mean, a lot of the research I did initially on Darwin and Shrewsbury and his connection with it was, how do we build up? What's our offer? What's our offer going to be? And I talked about the Unitarian Church. I talked about the geology. I talked about the Garden Diaries. That's fine. But by the way, he was born in Shrewsbury. It's gorgeous. Hello.
Yeah.
I mean, I won't mention the town I always mention when I tell this story, but there are worse towns he could have been born in. And then you step outside the boundaries of the town and you're in gorgeous countryside, and explore the meres and the mosses in the north and the South Shropshire Hills. It's what a place, and we're just we're rubbing shoulders with Wales. So wow,
I can remember growing up, and I remember my dad saying to me, if you ever walk through Shrewsbury, always remember to look up.
Yes, very true. Very true. First and second floors. Fascinating. There's a building opposite Clive's statue in the square that's got the most ornate oak carvings you've ever seen. I mean, they're crazy things. Full of it, full of stuff like that. The lanes, the passages, the shuts. You've got these shuts and passages which are fascinating. So it's a sort of medieval street layout. But this is for people who don't know Shrewsbury that well. But connecting them are these little narrow footpaths, these little narrow walks, these shuts. And you enter one on you're on one street, and the street looks predominantly Georgian, let's say. You walk through this shut, and out you're on the other side, and you're in medieval times. They're like time tunnels. I love them. They're fascinating.
I was in town once with Al, and we had to go somewhere. I can't remember where it was now. But we're walking somewhere, and I was like, "Oh, where have we got to go?" And he says, "Wherever it was." And I was like, "Oh, come with me." Then I just darted down one of the little back alleys. He's like, "Where are we going?" I was like, "Just come with me." Disappeared and then popped out. He's like, "Oh, we're here." I was like, "Yeah." But again, because I've grown up around here, and I've grown up in Shrewsbury, and walking around the town is just like walking down to the shop. Like, it's just I know Shrewsbury that well. It's sort of thing that doesn't really. It's cool. Don't get me wrong. It's cool, but like it's not really necessarily that significant to somebody like me that's lived here my entire life.
Yeah, you do get used to it, don't you? If you've lived there for an length of time, and what's lovely is to be in a situation where somebody comes from outside and you show them the town. I mean, every year I did the Darwin Walk, and people are just bowled over, and it's lovely to see that reaction.
It almost really reminds you a bit, doesn't it? It sort of like brings it home again. You're like, actually, when you step back and look at this, from an external perspective, you can see what they can see. And you kind of feel. I always feel a bit bad because I do sometimes take it a little bit for granted. The town that I live in, and I'm like, no, actually, I need to appreciate a bit. Hence why I'm doing this podcast with Al.
Yeah. Well, with a few exceptions, with a few possible exceptions, Charles Darwin, if he came back, we're talking about going back in time. If he went forward in time and arrived in Shrewsbury today, he would recognise Shrewsbury today. Yeah. He would know the buildings. He would know the streets. When I take people on the Darwin Walk, we don't even go to the Mount. We don't even go to the birthplace because we don't. We can, but we don't need to. I can tell Darwin's story of the first 27 years of his life just walking within the loop of the river. And they're all buildings that existed when he was there. buildings he went into, buildings that he knew, where he was taught at, be it the Reverend Casey's home on Claremont or the Shrewsbury School, which is now the library, the Unitarian Church, the Lion Hotel, where he caught the coach south to go on the voyage of the Beagle. St Chad's Church, where he was baptized in, it was November of 1809, which is just across the road from the quarry park with the dingle and the pool that he fished for newts in. It's still his town.
Yeah, and I loved your tour, by the way. It is a special. If you've never been on one of Jon's tour, I know we can't do it at the moment, but make sure you try and get on one, because the spaces are very limited anyway. But if you can get on one, they are fascinating. How do things compare this year? Obviously, we can't go out and do the tour and stuff. How do things compare this year to last year for you?
I think in terms of the content of the festival, I mean, I take no credit for the content of the festival. It is absolutely brilliant. I mean, it's got intellectual heft. It's got interest. The range of subjects that are being dealt with are fascinating, and also it brings in other aspects of what makes Shrewsbury special. So there's a talk on the flax mill, which is just being undergone the most amazing transformation. And let's be clear about this. It's the world's first iron-framed building. The skylines of the world, the great cities of the world, exist the way they do because of the flax mill in Shrewsbury, which was built as an iron-frame building out of necessity. It was a flax mill, and spontaneous combustion was a daily occupational hazard. They got the ironmasters up the road at Coalbrookdale, the Darbys and the Wilkinsons, who'd built the world's first iron bridge, and they thought, well, maybe there's something in this. Maybe we can adapt this new technology and build something that is not at risk of disappearing in a ball of flames every 5 minutes. But it also means we can build bigger and we can build higher. And the skylines of the world can be routed right the way back to Shrewsbury, to the flax mill. So that's a topic they're looking at. We're looking at the soil under our feet. This is a story that we don't talk enough about, and really we need to talk more about. The fragility of our life on Earth is on a knife edge, on a balance. And never mind climate change, the soil under our feet. If we don't begin to understand that a little bit more and how it works. Darwin was interested in soil, particularly in earthworms. The last paper that he finally published, although he'd been working for years on this, was about the action of earthworms. So he looked at the Roman ruins at Wroxeter. So just outside of Shrewsbury, on the outskirts of town, is the ruins of the fourth largest Roman city in England. Abandoned and left, partly excavated. You can visit it. English Heritage own it. But he asked himself, why do we have to dig down to find our past? Why are remains underground? Who's burying those remains? And he put a stone on the lawn at Down House and watched and waited for 20 odd years. And he realized it was worms. Worm casts make the earth fragile, the surface of the earth fragile, and basically things will gradually settle further and further down. Unless the ground is tamped down by a plow or a tractor or by human feet or whatever it might be, it would continue to just keep gradually growing up. It'd be very fragile, but the ground level would rise. So soil is something that's absolutely vital to our very existence on Earth. So the Darwin Festival is about Darwin, but it's about ideas, it's about thoughts, it's about understanding. It's about how we understand our place in the world and what our responsibilities are for it. So I think Darwin is about thought. It's about ideas and thinking. That's our gift, Shrewsbury's gift to the world, really, I would say.
Beautiful. And I just learned that as well. I'm today's years old. Yeah, so Thank you, Jon, for that. What are you going to be doing for your toast this year? How are you going to get people involved?
I'm doing it from here, from my house.
Cheers.
We not, yeah. Well, I'd encourage people to join me if you're able to do so. If you're able to join me at 12 noon on the 12th of February, you can book online through the website. And essentially, it's just a little ceremony. Thought it might be a nice idea to raise a glass to our famous son at 12 noon on his birthday every year. We've done that every year, for the best part of a decade now. On the 12th of February 2009, the bicentennial year and the 150th anniversary of the publication of The Origin of Species, in the Morris Hall courtyard, which is where we normally gather, it was absolutely heaving. There was just nowhere to move. It was quite remarkable. But we always end with a reading of an extract from the end of The Origin of Species, and that's really, I think that reminds us and centers us about what was so special about Charles Darwin and how he was able to communicate his ideas quite effectively and simply to a wide range of people. The Origin of Species, the book, was out of its first print run in days. I mean, it was an incredibly popular book, and it wasn't just scientists reading it.
Still is today. People enjoy that book. John, you are fascinating, and I would love to. I've said that to a lot of my guests today. I'd love to invite you on the biscuit to have like a proper sit down and talk about this, because I think you'd be a fantastic guest on a longer show that isn't live. So thank you very much for joining us. And
my pleasure.
I'd love for people to go and check out. Go to originalshrewsbury.co.uk and click on Darwin's face, like I just showed you, and book in with some of the lectures that are taking part during the Darwin Festival. There are so many things that you'd enjoy. I have learned since I've been helping out with the Darwin Festival. I have learned so much, especially about Darwin's family. Bibbs Cameron did an amazing talk last year on Darwin's family. She pushed Charles aside and she's like, okay, we all know about Charles Darwin. Let's talk about his family because they are fascinating. And I learned so much, and I enjoyed that I was learning, So make sure a lot of the courses are free as well. Not everything you have to pay for. So make sure you check out what's going on there. John's left us. I don't know if he's had an issue there, but he's left us. But John is amazing. If you can get on one of his tours, make sure you do, because walking through Shrewsbury is just fascinating. Right, we're gonna. Oh, he's coming back. He's coming back. He's here. These things happen with technology. They just happen. We got no control of it sometimes. Right. Would you like to tell people where they can find everything to do with you, John? And have you got anything that you want to sort of tell people?
No, that's fine. I think go to the festival website, Darwin in Shrewsbury Festival website. All the details are there of what we're going to be doing, and we'll be planning, for next year. Let's see what next year brings. But I think, as I say, really we want people to come and enjoy Darwin's town, to enjoy Shrewsbury and the countryside around it. And if you have any interest at all in the history of science and ideas, but also are interested in beautiful places to come and visit, then Shrewsbury is the place for you. Amazing.
Also, as well, guys, I've got to do this, but make sure you check out our website too, which is the shrewsburybiscuitpodcast.co.uk, and that's made for us by our friends at Web Orchard. If you do need a website for whatever you're doing, lots of people are doing e-commerce and working from home now. If you need a website, go to Web Orchard. They will sort you out an amazing website. We've run out of time. We've actually gone over time, which has been amazing, though. I've enjoyed every single minute of this. Yeah. John, thank you. Shane, thank you. And to the listeners and people that are watching at home, thank you very much for joining us. I'm going to try and quickly organise a bonus show with Tim Dawes that we won't be able to do this morning. We'll try and get it up and running for you guys. So keep your ears to the ground. You might get an extra show in the next hour or so. But John, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, John.
See you on Darwin Day, 12th of February.
We will be there. We'll be there.
It's a date.